It's a battle royale, right?
No, it's not. Just because there's a storm, it doesn't mean
Welcome to your first 6 hours of playing Elden Nightreign. This is where I explain how Nightreign is like for other people who are new to the series and people who played Souls-like games or previous titles of Front Software games like Bloodborne, Demon's Souls, the Dark Souls series, or even the King's Field series. If you haven't played roguelike games before, like Hades or Enter the Gungeon, let me explain how roguelike games are like. Roguelikes focus on the gameplay loop of surviving until the end, but when you die, you restart from the beginning with nothing again. And I mean not with gathered souls, humanity, or grace, I mean your gear restarts as well. Your whole inventory restarts. Personally, it's a massively different style of gameplay loops from the games that Front Software usually makes, since it's not focused onto normal progression. Also, as some of you guys already know, some mechanics are the same as the normal Elden Ring game, and I will talk about the new mechanics soon. But for now, the people who are new to Elden Ring, this in-game tutorial and my additionals will help you recognize these gameplay mechanics smoothly. These mechanics are general movement, dash, attack, locking on, flask, two-hand equip, blocking and dodging, jump attack, dodge attack, dual weapon attack, weapon skills based on the weapons currently held on your hand, and you can also riposte or parry an enemy, stagger, and backstab enemies. Then there is the inventory. All you have is two hands that can carry weapons, staves, magic apparatus, shields, or bows. You can also carry talismans or forever buffs, and you have items that are called consumables, which helps you making you stronger in a way. The new mechanics in Nightreign, for those who are wondering, are Surge Sprint, which is running in 3rd gear, Wall Jump and Mantle, removal of the spell category in your inventory. They are actually in the wands and finger skills instead. 2 special abilities based on the character you selected. Weapon rarity and their passive effects. Race only levels you up automatically and heals you when you're near it. Dying loses 1 level. And the ability to revive fallen teammates. These new mechanics are actually quite fun. The 2 special abilities make it quite unique, and it feels like playing modern Elden Ring when using those special abilities. Now your first steps to do one of the first expedition was this Tricephalos? I don't know, some of those. You can either play with people or by yourself, really depends on how you feel, and don't worry about the difficulty, it usually scales with solo or with players. Before you start your first expeditions, you can play different characters. A quick rundown of these characters are Wilder, Guardian, the big man with the shield, Recluse, Magic Wand User and Faith Believer, RNI, Bow and Arrow Man, Raider, a Gem Bro, Executor, a Sekiro type of character, and the 2 unlockable characters you might unlock later on, Duchess, which is a fake femboy, and Revenant, the ghost girl. As you start your expedition, you'll drop in randomly, and in your map, there are many points of interest you can go to, but not all of them are good places, at least. Not at the moment. You have to get stronger to get into those places, since the last time I got killed trying to fight them, which means I'm washed. Almost all points of interest in the map are places with some sort of boss, and some of those bosses could be special bosses or just larger basic enemy types as bosses. It really depends on where the point of interest you're going in. Certain areas are just no-go areas, and some areas are fine to deal with as long as you're strong enough. The way you can get stronger is to gain souls or runes, which you can use to level up your stats, and not the way you would level up normally in Elden Ring. The way that Nightreign does it is by automatically picking what stats to increase for you. Like if you are playing a character that casts spells, it automatically upgrades the mind stats, versus a character that only uses a heavy hammer might just increase only strength stats. After some certain amount of time, a Fortnite circle will start closing onto you, cutting off areas that you might previously be in. I guess the automatic stat picker is to help keep it fast paced, creating a race to the end type of feeling. The 4-night circle is actually called the Knight's Tide, and the game will tell you when the circle starts to get smaller. The circle will just stop until some amount of time passed. Usually this is when you can try to get stronger still. Then the game starts to tell you again that the circle is starting to get smaller by saying Rain's Galler. Now the circle will not fully close, but just a small area around the tree icon on the map. This is where and when you have to fight a special boss. It is usually a boss that is similar to normal Elden Ring bosses but has some differences, or a completely familiar boss from the previous games, like the Nameless King if you know. If you do defeat that boss, then the next day will be yours to explore, and the circle will disappear until the second night hits, or when the circle closes back up again, but with a much better and bigger boss to fight. After you fight the second night's boss, you now have to goop your way to the White Castle to fight the expedition boss. For your information, the expedition boss is the hardest boss you have ever fought. You have to bring your balls together and pray that you don't die and that you can dodge the cool and scary attacks. Now if you die or all your teammates die during the night's boss stages in the expedition, you lose. And you lose all your gears, or weapons, items, levels, and talisman that you collect to start all over again with no checkpoints until you can defeat the main expedition boss. If you win or lose, you can get these gems as rewards, and I will get to these later on. So in general, this is the main gameplay loop. First, you explore and fight the point of interest in the map. Second, fight the first night boss. Third, explore and fight again. Fourth, fight the second night boss. And lastly, fight the expedition boss you picked. Okay, let's talk about the gems. Gems are like passive buffs you can give yourself for the expedition and last until the end of the game. It either helps your stats, gives something to you at the start, or adds special effects to you. For example, it could increase mind stats, poison darts, or change certain features of your specials. In the round hold table, there's also some other things you can do. You can either change your characters, change outfits for your character, which you need to unlock or buy, change the relics you equipped like mentioned before, check the visual codex, which means checking what items, spells, and weapons are there in the game. Journal is about the lore of the characters that you have to unlock more chapters, and we unlock them by doing remembrance, which are like quest lines you have to complete. Doing those quest lines also gives out special rewards, but I will not talk about it here. Small Jar Bazaar is the shop where you can buy gems, relic rights, which can change what type of gems you can use for your character. And lastly, Sparring Grounds. This is where you can try out your characters, every weapons, and every item in the game. And if you actually completed your first expedition, there's an item that the boss will give you, allowing you to unlock your first character, Duchess, and also the time where you can unlock your second character as well. The first step is to give the watch to the white robe character, which you get from defeating your first expedition boss, but also watch out if you're currently in the remembrance of the character, because it will not allow you to converse with the character correctly. After that, a cutscene will play out and then you can play Duchess. The second character, or Revenant, is actually simple to get. You need to go to a Small Jar Bazaar shop to buy a specific item at the very bottom, and once you bought it, you need to go to this room specifically. There is a ghost girl you can interact, and you have to fight her and her minions to unlock the Revenant character. Now I won't really get into which character are better or worse. They all generally perform a lot better over the others in one aspect, but ever since then I just simply played the Recluse and I can only provide my experience playing this character. I'll also talk about the other classes that I did use as well, like the Guardian, Executioner, and Duchess. So let's talk about the Guardian first. The Guardian doesn't feel very mobile, simply because it acts more like a tank but with a shield. You can dodge with the shield, but really it's just a dash that may reduce the drain of your stamina when getting hit. Also, the special movesets you can use are just for clearing enemies and helping your teammates by negating your team and yourself from any damage by producing a circular area. Duchess is a more speedy support type. She can dodge and move very fast while also providing support to her teammates with her two abilities, especially double time ability, which repeats the previous time recorded, or in other words adds more damage by repeating the previous attack done. She has her other abilities as well, like special dodges where you can just spam the dodge button and it takes very little of your stamina. Executioner is a special type of character that acts like Sekiro. You might prefer this character if you like the special counter ability, lead effects, and katanas. His ultimate ability, which when you become a big wolf is maybe underwhelming and is not very useful for strong boss encounters, but good for clearing smaller enemies or even recovering your health if you turn off your ability right after. If I have to choose a second pick, I would like to choose Duchess because she's a lot fun being speedy and with a lot of iframes from her dodgings, and the fact that she can support her teammates sounds pretty good to me. Now to my main class that I use, Recluse. The reason I like Recluse is because the complexity of her abilities, just because of her magic cocktail ability that allows to mix collected elemental residue from enemies or allies, which you can combine 3 elemental residues and produce different results. At most, the mixture can make 14 different moves to play with, and each to its own has its own uses. Recluse can also use incantations from fingersuits, which still allows a more uniquely playstyle. It is a fun character to use, but really hard if you're not on top of your game, preventing yourself from getting hit, and it's only useful when you have certain spells on you. Overall, if you don't like complexity, then pick something simpler to use. This is a hard class to use and to master, but don't worry, I won't shame you for picking a preferable character to use. So here's my final note. How is there hate for this game? Just hating on this game because it's like a randomizer mod or recycled content doesn't really make sense. This game isn't like a Souls game, it's simply a roguelike game. Nightreign is not supposed to be very specifically to be like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, or actually a fully sized RPG game that Front Software normally makes for the series. This game is just a different formula than the typical games that they put out using the same assets from Elden Ring, and it's supposed to be a small $40 games with tons of replayability. It is an asset flip, but they made the assets themselves, so it's not really typically an asset flip game. What I define as an asset flip is when you use pre-made models from a third party, and it's not that bad for them to reuse their older game assets because they have been doing that. It's just not that big. If you expected full-on character creation, custom character class, maps to explore, gear to hold on to forever, or full-on RPG elements in this game, then you will feel a bit disappointed. But it is not necessarily a bad thing that Front Software made this game, since this game doesn't cater to the normal crowd. But I do think people who played this series before just expected the previous similar game and just complaining about not fulfilling their expectations. But I don't know, I'm not these people. Although Nightreign does have some real small problems, I think because the game just barely touches the heights of replayability compared to other roguelikes. Maybe after playing for a month or so, for some hours a day, Nightreign is not that dynamic content wise. For example, it still has the small map pool you could play, but each map has the same bosses, certain areas are the same, and graces are at the same location. Though for this context of the game and its origins, I think it might be harder to implement for something cool like procedural generated maps. It might be alright if it had more map varieties instead, or at least forcing some varieties in the map to us players. But doing so might spell trouble for people who never played roguelikes before. But it is a Front Software game, so that's alright. Get good, I guess. Just some small variations should be fine, like changing POI sites and boss placements around should be fun. The biggest factor is map exploration, and if it's not the same map being made, then there's no exploration left to do, or at least picking and choosing from the map where to go. It will always be the same run no matter what, unless you use different characters, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. Since it's a roguelike game like Hades, Synthetic, Binding of Isaac, Gunfire Reborn, or Enter the Gungeon, you might expect that it should have procedural generated maps for Nightreign, but I don't think so. Almost all these games mentioned here have very simple, beautiful, or cute procedural generated maps, and usually feel very similar. Risk of Rain, also being a roguelike, is actually quite similar in structure to Nightreign. It doesn't have procedural generation of the maps. All it really does is change placements of enemies, which Nightreign does need. I do think people's complaining about the lack of variety in the maps, like enemy placements, boss placements, and PoE locations is just not very replayable after 50 hours of gameplay. Though if you are playing more than 4 hours each day in this game, it will get stale really fast, so pace yourself. But I'm not your mom, so do whatever you want. Don't get me wrong, overall the game is just fun, and these special characters are fun to play, especially when we are moving away from the typical generic fighter that we have been playing, like the Tarnish, and in Dark Souls, the Chosen Undead. In Nightreign, we can actually be the cool guys that does these crazy things instead of these bosses being the only ones that do these crazy moves. I don't think there is a unique roguelike game similar to this, but it does fill up the desire to fight cool bosses very quickly. So like and subscribe, or just don't.
What'd you do to him?
I hate this